Hi, this is Noah, and this is my big data project. I was interested in weather blankets, or I was inspired by them, which are these sort of projects in which you make a blanket by only making one row per day, and the color of that row changes based on the temperature for that day. So by the end of the year, you have this full blanket where you can see the sort of temperature pattern through the year, like these examples over here. Instead of just doing a blanket, I was interested to see in how these blankets would maybe get affected through the years because of global warming. So instead of doing a blanket for 1 year, I decided to do it for historical weather data. I chose 80 years from 1940 to 2020, and I selected the daily minimum, maximum, and then the differences in those in case just the temperature isn't felt that much of a difference, but maybe you feel more of a difference in the daily ranges. You're going through more temperature difference through the day, a greater temperature range. So I got the data. The API that I was using requires specific coordinates. So I chose specific countries. I chose four that are known to be vulnerable to climate change, four that have shown in NASA statistics to have this more anomalies in weather patterns. And then the last two to round it out to a nice 10 were chosen for the hottest and coldest recorded temperatures, which were the hottest was in Death Valley in California, so USA was added. The coldest was in Antarctica. Those were then found for their coordinates. And then the data was grabbed, processed, cleaned, and saved into individual CSV files for which the data is being printed out here, being plotted out here. And then got the minimum and maximum from the total data. So the lowest temperature we see in this data is negative 70 degrees and the highest is 51. I was going to stop it there, but instead I thought it might be interesting to not only have individual weather blankets for each country, but to have one that has all of the countries on it, so it's easier to compare between them. So I did this by getting the yearly averages for each one of those countries, finding the minimum and maximum for each one of those countries. So you can see all of these averages printed out here, and then plotted, saved into a CSV file with all of the countries, and found the lowest and highest yearly average. The lowest yearly average was negative 45 degrees, highest was 29. Then using this, I created this project. So the first two correspond to the individual countries' weather blankets. So you can choose a country, say Canada, and you can choose a mode, either to see the daily minimum temperatures, the daily maximum temperatures, and the daily difference temperatures. So you can see that Canada sees more of a difference in spring. So you have more of a temperature range that you're going through throughout the day, but less in the fall. This netted pattern that is sort of seen on top has 12 rows to resemble the blanket that I was going for. And each one of these rows represents a month. So starting with January at the top, going to December at the bottom, going from 1940 on the left side through time to 2020 on the right side. Each one of these individual squares is a separate day, which is why we can see the sort of temperature differences through the year and then through the years. Say Antarctica is interesting for its differences. They're very, very low in comparison to some of the other countries. Chad has very high differences consistently, and interestingly, in the summer, it has less of a difference, and it is hot pretty consistently throughout the year. This other drop-down menu here is the one for all of the countries on one blanket. Instead of each row representing a month, each row represents a year, so there's only 10 of them. And then this drop-down menu is to choose what range you're seeing it in. So this global range that I initially printed out as the only option only shows what the temperatures are like in comparison from one country to another. So you don't see much of a pattern because the range is so big. You only see that some countries are colder, some countries are hotter, some countries are in the middle, which doesn't give you a lot of information. So you can change this range to specific ones. Say we take Afghanistan's range, you can see the full difference in those colors through the years, and you can see how Afghanistan is getting hotter. You see some of these hotter temperatures in history, but you see less and less of these cold years as time progresses. And you can see this in all of them. Say we take Chad, so you can see Chad and Somalia have a similar range, but the full range of Chad, you can see that it had really, really cold years that it just doesn't see anymore. It sees hotter and hotter years. You can see Antarctica here, all the other countries are hotter, but Antarctica, it had these really cold years that it just doesn't see anymore. And this is the hottest year recorded in that time frame that we saw would be, in this case, 2019. And this is my project.